From all I've heard about GitHub, I never thought it would be this easy. Hello, and welcome to the Infinite Inkwell, or welcome back to the Infinite Inkwell. I'm Lewis, and I'm on a journey to discover new ways of telling stories. At the moment, I'm doing that through a video game, and I have had no technical expertise before this point. This is all afresh to me. So let's start with a recap. In my last few videos, I've been looking at artwork, and in fact, I did a live stream last time I was on, all going through a lot of the different pieces that I was playing with, and some of the challenges that I had while building this out. Now, today I'm actually going to talk about something more practical, which is how I'm finding using GitHub with Godot. I've heard a lot of things and horror stories from developers, both in games and in different parts of my life. So professionally, I work with developers, and I've been genuinely surprised by how much in the way of pushback they've had around, oh, Git's where it gets challenging. This is where there are often quite a few issues. So I went into this quite apprehensive, thinking it was going to be very, very difficult. But I have been pleasantly surprised. Pleasantly surprised. So what I'm going to do is walk you through how I set it up and what I've got going on. And I'm going to make a couple of changes to demonstrate how I'm using it. And this might be useful to you. I'm going to level you. I'm using a Mac, as some of you may know. So this is not necessarily going to be relevant to all of you, but I'm hoping that it should be as simple with a Windows setup or even Linux, thinking about it. The things that I will tell you right now is that I am using GitHub Desktop and Godot 4.3 beta. I'm using the Godot 4.3 beta because I'm actually interested in the tile maps and the new nodes that are introduced for that. I'm not going to look at that today. That will likely be the next video as I'm putting together some of my worlds and building that out. But today I'm just going to focus on setting up GitHub and making sure it tracks my changes. So let's begin. So quick editor's note here. The reason this video is a bit late is because one of the main files that has a good chunk of the video actually corrupted. I don't know what's wrong with it, but it's not letting me edit it and do anything with it. So I'm re-recording it instead. So now you have me, multiple days later, Lewis, doing this bit on GitHub and Godot. Now back to your regular programming. Okay, so before I start doing any development, I'm actually going to start in GitHub. So before I start any development at all, I just want to go to GitHub. I've already set up my repository. I've currently called it my first game because I do not have a better name out for it. My game doesn't have a title. I'm sure that will come to me in time. By default, you get given a main branch, which is where all of your code sits. Everything that's kind of the core part of it is going to sit under main. I also created a dev branch. My dev branch is for everything that's in development. Regardless of what it is, everything gets merged into dev. So until we have something that is ready for release, it's going to sit in my dev branch. And then you'll notice that I've also got a player character branch. This is actually something that is split off from my dev branch. So my development branch is where all my development happens, and the player character branch is just where player character development happens on that dev branch. Does that make sense? So I can piece my code together out into chunks and then do things bit by bit and then merge it back if it's something that I want to do. This should actually make it a lot easier to narrow down different features that I want to build and then put them out. So it actually makes me feel better about this, and it gives me a lot more control over what I want to do. So I'm working on the player character. So I'm going to open the player character branch, and there are no changes. We are going to actually make some changes to the player character branch. So to do that, let's open Godot. Okay, so here's Godot, and here is my game. Now, what I want to do is actually just replace the collision body. So I'd actually like this to be not a rectangle, but a capsule. So let's just go and replace this here. So that is my collision object done. And you can see that I can now hit save, and that's the change made. Now I'm going to go back to GitHub and let's see what we have. What we should see is there are a bunch of changes. So we can see that in this instance, the rectangle shape was removed and we added the capsule shape. The size of that also changed. So that's the change. I can see where my change is. I can read the code and see exactly what it was. And I have one changed file, so my player character scene. So now I can just give it a summary. So swapped out rectangle collision for capsule, changed the collision node from rectangular shape to a capsule shape. So now I'm going to commit that change to the branch. And there we go. Okay, so now I've committed them. I just need to push them to, and there we go. I've pushed it to the branch. It's already been published, so I just need to now do a pull request for it. Basics in dev, create the pull request. So it's just asked me to open a pull request. Okay, so I've got all the details for the pull request, and I'm going to hit create pull request. It's able to merge. It's checking its ability to automatically merge it. Great, we're merging the pull request. Confirm merge. Done. And the branch can be deleted. Done. And that was it. It really is that easy. And I didn't think it would be this easy. Once I'd done some of the basics that I'd seen in a video previously around installing Git on a Mac, I'm going to link those down in the description, then just installed GitHub Desktop, which I would recommend doing. Actually, all of this UI that I've been using has been mostly GitHub Desktop with a little bit of GitHub Web for the pull request. All I did was create a branch from development, work on that branch, so make any changes to my code, save it, then commit it back to GitHub, and then merge it with the code that already existed in my development branch. So giving me a nice, clear way of understanding the different code that was added each time I merge a branch back. This is going to allow me to control every update that I make to my code. If there are any issues, this should make it a lot easier for me to go back and go, hang on, this stopped working. Why did this stop working? What change did I make? I can't explain how important that is. If you do make a mistake, if you do break something, how many times did you see me break stuff during my walkthrough of Godot when I first started playing it? Those first 8 hours were really, really painful because I kept breaking stuff without knowing. Now, the one thing that I would caveat this with is that I'm going to have to do a lot of legwork to make sure that I am staying on top of my branches, and that I am making sure that these are updated regularly. So because of the way that I'm working on this being a few hours here or there, it just means each day I will create a new branch and I will work on that branch for that day or that one feature for that day and then merge it at the end of the day as long as I'm happy with it. And that's going to be how I manage this, because I'm going to be jumping in and out. And in fact, I might want to work on different branches. So where this is just the character, I'm sure I'll come back later once I've got the rest of the animations in. Now, on the occasion where I will be spending like an entire Sunday or Saturday working on it, then I will probably have multiple branches for different pieces that I'm working on. So where one might be just the player character, that's fine. That's going to get a branch. But then where I'm working on things like the tile maps, that's fine. That's going to be its own thing, and I will focus just on that. And I will have those multiple branches for multiple features where I am spending all day coding, because that kind of makes sense. So I'm going to be quite pragmatic with how I approach using GitHub and where it makes the most sense to do so. This is going to be more helpful for me than I could have probably ever believed. Setting up the repo is actually really easy. Once I'd created my GitHub account and I downloaded GitHub Desktop, it actually asked me to create a repository on my machine. So I just selected the Godot folder and let it take all of that. And it was really that simple. I did not do much to get this working. I thought I would have had to have done a lot more. And as someone who works on a Mac, I thought this was going to be painful. I have seen some videos where they recommended other tools that weren't GitHub Desktop, but I'm actually quite happy with this. I'm also going to link those down in the description as well, so if you do want to go check them out, you should. They were actually really useful and helped me understand some of the basics when I was first getting used to uploading code with GitHub in this way. This has been a huge learning for me around the complexities that sit within GitHub, but also some of the easy elements that people don't think about. And in fact, I was quite impressed by how simple this was for a beginner to pick up. I know there's going to be a lot of controversy around me saying that, but I did feel like this was a big step forward for me. This felt quite accessible, and I've been told for a long time, oh, you're doing game dev on a Mac, that's going to be hard, that's going to be a challenge. Oh, you're using Git, that's going to be really painful. I realize this is just early steps, but I feel more comfortable now knowing that I'm going to have this level of control over my different versions, over the changes that I make, and I'm going to be able to go through it and understand it. That will mean that I have to stay on top of it, and it becomes part of my process around building, is that every time I start wanting to work on it, I have to create a new branch first, then I start building. And I'm kind of okay with that. I don't think it's the end of the world, but let's see how I get on. So that was a bit more of a proper video this week. Hopefully this one will be quite interesting and how I found working with Git and Godot, and maybe you learned something from it. As always, it's been great chatting to you down in the comment section. I've really enjoyed it. Happy to take any thoughts, ideas, and even tell me about your experiences using Godot and GitHub and any challenges you've had, particularly with this, because I know that I'm early on in my journey and I'm going to have some challenges. So I'd love to hear about it. Let's have a chat down in the comment section. And if you did find this useful, hit the like button. It'd be really nice of you. I'd really appreciate it. And then maybe you want to see what else I'm going to be doing next. Then hit subscribe. It would be great to have you on the journey to see what stories I'm going to be able to tell. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.